Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to another episode of The Ways We Move. We are into our second season and very excited to continue to give you this work of innovative mobility solutions and the people behind them. My name is Nicholas Zard, and I am your host on this podcast. You're watching it either on YouTube visually or on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, everywhere else, Buzzsprout, where you can listen to us and understand a little bit more about what is happening in the world of transportation and the world of mobility. And today I have another special guest and someone I've been wanting to have on the podcast for a very long time. And that's David Stepanek, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at the Bristow Group. And for those of you who know Bristow, Bristow is a very diversified company, all within, transportation, but mostly helicopters, offshore oil rigs and things like that. They do a lot of other things, which we found out today. David is fantastic. He's got not only an amazing background, but he is one of the important people, if not the most important people at the company, making sure that AAM fits into Bristow's future. So where do eVTOLs fit? Where will eSTOLs fit? And where will eCTOLs fit? How all of this not only continues the work of Bristow, but how to integrate this intelligently in an efficient way to continue the work that they're doing. So without further ado, we're going to hear about David. I hope you enjoy it. All right. Well, David, please take it away. Introduce yourself. Who is David?
Thanks, Nicholas. I'm David Stepanek. I'm a lot of things, but I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Transformation Officer for the Bristow Group in this capacity. My role is leading the transformation of Bristow and bringing in new technologies to the business. And by virtue of being innovator and leader in vertical flight solutions, we are focusing on advanced mobility, both vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, short field takeoff and landing aircraft, which is very similar access points that helicopters have. And we also are in the conventional side. A lot of people don't know Bristow operates fixed wing aircraft. We've operated them on a charter for demand services from our customers. And we also own and operate a regional air carrier in Australia called Air North. And in our history, we've owned other airlines, both the United States, the United Kingdom. So it's really part of our DNA. So we're looking at all three applications of advanced mobility as we bring through that technology. I've been leading this process for the company now for almost 5 years. I transitioned from Chief Operating Officer.
Yep.
And prior to joining the Bristow Group during the merger with Era, I was 10 years at Petroleum Helicopters International, where I was a division president there and chief commercial officer beginning. And prior to that, I spent a little over 20 years with Sikorsky Aircraft in various roles, both on the technical side, engineering side, customer service, and sales of commercial helicopters. And I got into the helicopter business by way of the United States Marine Corps, where I was an avionics technician and air crewman on CH-53 Deltas and HMH-461, which I'm very proud of. We just hit our 250th anniversary this year, or last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So besides all that, I'm also a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. It's been a really interesting 40-year career so far.
Wow. Okay, that's really good. I knew most of it. I just didn't know about the Australian adventure. And also, if I remember well, I met you before your new position at one of the Vertical Flight Society
Yeah,
events.
that's right. We did meet when I was still the COO. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And it was always, and then it really impressed me because I think Bristow, almost everybody knows about Bristow, but they might not know exactly what Bristow does, or maybe one or two things. But once I understood the breadth of the operations at Bristow, I was not only impressed, I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And then listening to you, I thought, wow, you guys, you're so pragmatic about advanced air mobility. And you've always done one thing that I, especially as a journalist, I've always appreciated. You write that fine line between, fluffy press releases that tend to be more on the marketing side of things, and then not enough that tend to be on the dry side of things. You guys are just hitting that right middle. I have to tell you, as a journalist, we love that. And you're like, all right, these guys are serious. We can really look into what they're doing. So I can't wait to hear more about it.
Well, thanks for those accolades. I mean, kudos to our communications team. They're top notch.
Yeah.
We have a great process of our press releases and how we do that. And we tend to go to the more conservative side. We are a public company, so we're very careful. We're only going to say what we're going to do, and we're only
Yes.
going to say what we've already done. Otherwise, we're
Yes.
not going to get out there too far ahead of anyone. Overachieve, under promise is what we intend to do through this whole process. So
Yeah.
high expectations, and then just put our our work to the grindstone and get it done.
Yeah. And you certainly do a good job at that. I walked away from companies after writing press releases after press releases and thinking I was just like a gerbil in a wheel going,
Yeah.
this is going nowhere, guys. This is going nowhere. So tell us a little bit about when did Bristow start to look at advanced air mobility, which, by the way, I'm assuming it was even before we called it advanced air mobility. And maybe even before that. I mean, it might be a good idea for those who don't know the breadth of what you guys do at Bristow, maybe to talk about your operations before we talk about advanced air mobility. So what does Bristow
Certainly.
do fundamentally?
So the work that was done on advanced air mobility at the time, it was called you were hearing the word just urban mobility, urban air mobility. Actually predates me coming on to Bristow. Um, so there was a Era Group, which was now the consolidator of the Bristow Group, that happened in 2020.
That's
Had
right.
done a bit of work on it and produced a document that was sitting in the files. Myself, I had been exposed to it through Leonardo's Project Zero.
That's
So
right.
Dr.
Yes.
James Wang, who led that project, he and I were colleagues from our Sikorsky days, and he went over to Leonardo. And I think it was 2011 or 2012. We were at Heli Expo, which is now VAI, and he comes up to me all excited and says, "I got something I want to show you." And he shows me this video of this tilt rotor, delta wing aircraft, and asked me what I think about it. I was like, "It's really cool, right?" And we talk about all this stuff. And he's like, "I said, what do you think about commercial?" He said, "Not ready. This is going to be a long way." So I kind of set that back in my mind. And then as I was progressing through the work that we were doing at PHI, I thought about technologies and drones. And I really struggled with how to make it commercial. It's going to take billions of dollars of capital. It's going to take Airbus and Boeing and Lockheed Martin to do these things. So fast forward, Bristow, the Era Group did this study around 2018, 2019. I was recruited away from PHI to come in to work for the Era Group on the preceding this merger that was going to be announced shortly with the Bristow and Era Group, which is going to make the largest publicly traded helicopter company. We had 1.5 billion in revenue. We were operating at the time in 15 countries. We're in 19 now. And I had done some work in integration and mergers and acquisitions prior. So I was going to lead. I was going to be part of the co-lead of the integration of that. So we got through the integration. And I'll remind everybody, this was COVID. So this was really an interesting time
That's
doing a big
right.
merger where nobody could travel, international company, two new companies, synergies, all that stuff. Actually, really interesting that it worked very well and quickly. So we got through the merger. We announced the merger in January. We closed it in June of 2020. Proceeding to close, I was chief operating officer. So we had a lot of work to do, primarily in the United States, consolidating Bristow and Era Group's offshore energy business and their search and rescue business in the United States, which we completed ahead of schedule. So now we're finished this hard work and we've got the business ready to go. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, supply chain and IT. But Chris Bradshaw, our CEO, called me and wanted to talk because, when we merged and we got the leadership team together, we talked about our vision and our mission and our core principles. And our vision is to be a leader in innovative and sustainable vertical flight solutions. So how are we going to do that?
Wow. Wow.
And how do we do that with traditional helicopters? And what are your thoughts on this new stuff that's coming out? And I told him at the time, I was pretty skeptical of these eVTOLs that I've been reading about. I'm skeptical about the capital requirements. I'm skeptical about the technology.
Rightfully so. Yes.
And he said, okay, great. He says, why don't I want you to put together an organization, Paris, potentially for this. Let's look at it, figure it out. So I went through a process of different concepts, presented to Chris. He kept pushing back on me and finally said, listen, Dave, I want you to lead this. We're going to let's reorganize the business. running. You step out of your CEO role so you can actually focus on this. So for the first year, it was a company of me or a team of me really doing a thought experiment. And I talked to guys
Wow.
like James Wang and other technologists, and I started to visit these OEMs and talk to the investor community. And I started to piece together a story of this could work. There could be some applications of it. I don't think it's going to be exactly what people say it's going to be straight away, but we can get there. So I went back and I read David McCollum's biography of the Wright brothers, and I started thinking about how we went through this evolution of aviation. I said, let's just apply those kind of principles. Let's not, hey, we're not starting United Airlines tomorrow. We got to go through a process. So I started looking at companies that meant that pragmatic approach to us. And we developed
Yes.
relationships with several of them. Key ones. You see the one off my right shoulder is the aircraft have been flying around Norway for the last 6 months. Um, we developed through that process. I started to build a team. I brought in people that had some experience in new technologies, had some experience flying tilt rotor, V-22 609s, both in Europe and the United States. Put a great team together, some financial planning, people that would build out routings, and really people that had relationship building skills. And we just went about this process of what the market really looks like globally, what the market looks like in our regions where we are, and what do we have the right to win. So applying our core competencies of what Bristow is today, 75 years of vertical and aviation experience, multiple regulatory jurisdictions across, we operate in 6 continents. Um, we know how to buy aircraft. We know how to bring new technologies in. We have a supply chain management. We have the ability to build technologies of safety management and process and procedures that was all developed supporting offshore energy services and search and rescue. At the same time,
Mm.
when we merged the company, we had the UK SAR program, and we
Oh,
were
yeah.
going through a potential rebid of that, which happened in 24, and we were awarded that UTSRTG. We also won government SAR programs in the Netherlands, in the Republic of Ireland, the Dutch Caribbean, and the Falkland Islands. So we're applying all of those technologies and building that and utilizing, the really strong balance sheet that was built out of this core business to support investments in what we need to become an operator for advanced air mobility. And that's kind of the backbone of how we got to where we are. And every year has been really a focus on different things. Last year was a focus on really starting the evolution of test evaluations and building out some commercial agreements with new OEMs, furthering our relationships with regulators and governments, back like Norway, UK, United States. So really doing quite a bit of government relations interactions. Those have been the focus on, but that was the focus on 2025. 2026, we're going to be focusing on things like EIPP and
Right.
additional of phases of what we're doing in Norway and other operations in Europe, focusing on what is AI really going to mean for aircraft operations and advanced
Yes.
mobility.
Thank you.
How do we use the tools that are being developed so rapidly and changing every day? So what does that core look like, and how do we make administrations of flights and both maintenance and flight operations for the pilots and closing out to make it more efficient and less time consuming than it is today? And then what do we do for things like, material control, and how does heat and vibration affect that on the aircraft? We're going to do all those things this year. So we've just been really pragmatically going through and effectively accelerating the evolution of 120 years of aviation into maybe 5 years of it, to
Yes.
where we can get to a point where we can operate these aircraft safely, efficiently, and reliably, and make sure that we've got the right people, the right equipment in the right location for advanced mobility. And whether it's
And
5
definitely the
aircraft or 5 million aircraft, I mean, I don't know what the number is going to be, but I know that I feel very confident in saying that these aircraft really are transforming aviation transportation. electric propulsion systems, whether it's battery or hybrid electric or hydrogen electric, are more
Doesn't matter.
reliable and less expensive than traditional. Doesn't mean it's going to
Uh,
replace them because
I
but it's going to fit a
no,
market that maybe we hadn't been able to work in.
that's
Electra is
it.
a great story, thinking about
Electric.
the
Yep.
point to point and
Yep.
direct aviation that we used to
Right.
have with some all
Yep.
turboprops, Beech 1900s
Yes.
and caravans that went away because of the regional jets.
The
Yeah.
X's,
So
et cetera, so on and
maybe
so forth.
we can change that. We can get
So
back to that. So that's our thought.
yeah, you really nailed it down. I think advanced air mobility is answering needs that we didn't know we still had that have been
Yes.
replaced by other things that now it's like, when I take an airplane, when I fly with Delta from Savannah to Atlanta at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's a fully packed 757. And that means less than 30 minutes in the air and coming back
Yeah.
down. Whereas you're right, propellers would be better for this, right? If I go to Augusta, it's 2.5 hours worth of driving, whereas a little propeller would get me there in, I don't know, 45 minutes tops, slowest speed. So indeed, you guys have really thought about it really well. And that's the one thing that won me over is you guys have integrated it really well, and you're very much futurist in that sense of looking at it.
Well, thank you. The thing that stood out to me the most as I was analyzing all this, everybody was focusing on it's electric, it's sustainable, and that's really important.
Yeah, of course.
But the
But
cost is what
yes,
is,
thank you.
and the simplification of the drive and powertrain and the simplification of the flight control systems is what
Yes,
stood out to me because all
yes,
those are all the things that drive lower reliability and higher cost.
absolutely.
And if you take all that away and you simplify it, it's just okay. Now, yes, I can't fly 2,000 miles across the United States or across the continent of Europe, but I can go 100 miles and I can do it for less than $1 a mile. I could
Exactly.
probably build a business around that that's compelling. And that's that's
Exactly.
that's what we're looking at.
That was one of the things that we were talking with Beta right around the same time that we met, and they were saying, "Look, our little area will replace what is it? A van, a truck, a 767, and that not in terms of full cargo space, but a lot of them for less than the price of all of these things, and hence all of a sudden it makes sense." And that's something that we've been fighting for, the business model aspect of it, the financial business model of it. Because it was really nice hearing about, yeah, electricity will save the world. Well, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's been saving the world for 20 years. But the only time you finally go forward is when you have a good business case. And it is happening now. So that's why it was so exciting to hear you, because you were very cautious and you were pragmatic about it, which I thought was the most important thing that we needed at the time. And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm giving you too many compliments here. So, well,
That's okay. I mean, the compliments really rest on
yeah,
the company. You know,
yeah, it's
having Bristow, having the support of my peers on the executive leadership team
right.
and our board, most importantly,
Yes,
was really compelling for me because you start, you start talking about profit centers within our organization. And, I was running the chief operating officer. So I was running all that and we were doing all these great things. And now I'm just a cost and we're a future thought about revenue and we're a future thought about, and we don't know it's going to work. I mean, I have to say
no,
it. We don't know for sure.
nope,
We've got great data now from the ALIA work that we've done for 6 months,
that's
and
right.
we've got the
Yep,
processes going through, but we've still got to go through that evolution of understanding, will these electric motors work as well as we think they will? Will the flight control system, will there be other issues that we'll have to deal with that we just haven't, what's the airframe life limit? What's the
right.
residual value? How are we going to finance these? And that's what the things
Especially
we've been
with
working with.
Yeah, especially with, now we're dealing with not just carbon fiber, which we already know. We don't know all that
Mhm.
much about how it ages, just ask Qatar, right? But
That's
also
right.
thermoplastics. I mean, things like that we don't know. And I had a really great conversation with Marilyn Smith at Georgia Tech about, that reshapes MROs completely. Whereas traditional MROs, we know how they function, everything. With AAM, that's not going to be the case. Now, like maintenance and repairs, we can have that spread out and everything. Overhaul, well, that's going to be a big
It is.
logistics nightmare on top
Yeah.
of it.
And that's really the third business case that we've developed is, support our existing customer base,
Yes, yes,
then do regional mobility and cargo. And the third business case is MRO. We are everywhere we operate
Have to.
in all of our countries, we have our own MRO structure. So we'll be able to
You have
support
to.
that.
You have to. You can't do without it. I mean, you could sign an agreement with another company, but Lord knows that can be tricky down the road. So one thing you just said reminded me, and this is something that always excites me, is the NDA of the DNA. Sorry, NDA. You know what I just did not too long
Yeah,
ago.
get it.
The DNA, the DNA of a company. Some companies are they know how to move forward, and some companies just don't know how to move forward, right? But in your case, Bristow is definitely one of those companies that's flexible enough, that's futuristic enough to move forward. What makes that secret recipe at Bristow? I mean, does it come from the top? Is it part of the people you have, or is it a mixture of everything? But why is Bristow like that? And other companies are like, nah, we're just going to continue the way we're doing it.
I think that it's all the things that you just mentioned. So it all starts with leadership and and the leadership as it's forward thinking. I mean, think about as I was explaining to some of our team, I'm buying a helicopter. We bought a lot of helicopters, and I bought and sold a lot of helicopters. If I'm buying a AW189 or an S92, I'm thinking about owning it for 25 years.
All right. Yep.
So
Yep.
I've got to think about the 25 years. So it's 2025 now. So if I'm buying one of those today, I'm thinking about, really got to think about 2050. And so, in 2050, the technology that's going to change between now and then is going to be great. We're going to continue to acquire assets like that because we do still
Of
believe that it's a
course.
very long game for the
Yep.
helicopters, but
Yep.
we got
Oh,
to start
yes.
thinking about the technologies as they're evolving. And what allowed Bristow to do it was really besides a forward thinking leadership team and a forward thinking board, and great core competencies that we could leverage. That so all of our people, all of our stuff that we do is a strong financial company. We had a great balance sheet. We're positive. We're generating great revenues and net income from that. So I tell people, I said, if you want to be in advanced air mobility, if you're an investor and you're thinking about advanced air mobility and you're looking at all the different options of all these pre-revenue startup companies, which still need their capital, if you invest in Bristow, you're getting a free call into AAM because you're
That's
getting
right. That's
our
right.
equities are priced at what we're doing today and some future thoughts of what earnings are from energy services and from search and rescue and government services. But the premium for eVTOL and AAM is not in there yet. So that's coming.
Not yet.
So that thought process, and really, I talked about our core competency. One of the other things I like to talk to people, I've been talking about this for quite some time. You look at Bristow, you look at our competitors, we all fly the same aircraft. We fly S92s, AW189s, 189s, 139s, H160s now. We generally will attract labor from the same labor pool because, we're
That's
operating in
true.
different countries, different licenses. So what
That's
makes
true.
us different?
Yeah.
Copters, great technology. But when it transfers from an OEM or even an eVTOL aircraft, transfers from OEM, it's no longer a technology. It's a tool that we use to leverage our technologies, our people, our processes and procedures, our culture. And that's the differentiator. So same thing with these vehicles too, says we're just going to take the same competencies and core competencies and culture of operating traditional helicopters and airplanes and apply it to these new technologies as they come in. And these tools, now they're a tool for us that we can use to generate revenue and earnings, will apply with the same core competencies. And that's the whole reason. It's like we think we looked at it as an ability to not necessarily transform our entire fleet, but to transform Bristow into new markets for advanced where we can't serve with helicopters
Right.
because
Yeah.
cost and noise and other things that get in the way. So we think that we know there's a really interesting market and whether these tools will work for them, which we believe that we have higher expectations every day as our OEMs are evolving and our partners are evolving. And what we're doing with them is we're using our core competencies as a currency to work with the companies like Beta and Electra and Vertical Aerospace and Elroy and Eve because they would
Elroy.
like
Yeah.
our bit they our guidance and I can tell you they've been listening to us.
Yes.
I tell them all along. I said, don't listen to me everything I say because whatever I'm going to tell you is I want it to go faster, I want it to fly farther, I want it to carry much as possible. But there's got to be what you got to find that line where it won't drive production costs, won't drive direct operating
Right.
costs. We can build a model around this performance and then not care
Such
about whether it's this, that, or that. How much can it carry? How far can it go? How much will it cost?
That's such a good point that you make there. And you're right, creating the right synergy. And that's also another thing that so I've gone through a lot of disruptive technology since the 80s, right? They all share the same patterns more or less as far as introduction into the real world out there. And one thing that I've noticed is that usually the first ones, unfortunately, sometimes will jump the gun because investors are behind pushing them to come out with a lot of products. I was working with Rivian in the beginning, and let me tell you, Rivian was amazing until
Mhm.
the investors pushed them a little too quick to come out with things. And then then you get into that Microsoft philosophy of we'll just push updates and upgrades out there and everything. It doesn't work well anymore.
No, not in
So I like
aviation, doesn't it?
no, exactly
No,
10 year, a decade, 1,000 engineers, and $1 billion. End of discussion, investors.
at least,
But
yeah.
at least, yeah, exactly. Especially for something like what we're doing. But also, I like that pragmatic approach to your business model. Is keep forward momentum going with efficiency by bringing in things at one point or another. It will click in, but you keep going, you keep moving instead of just doubling down and trying to make a brick fly. Well, that's probably the worst thing I could say because sometimes there are bricks flying, aren't they? Especially the new ones. But that's the whole logic, and I really like that. That's pretty well said.
Well,
There's so many things you're talking about that I want to go into all of these directions, but I'm going to have to go back to something that I love, that I'm really passionate about, and that's the infrastructure of advanced air mobility. Because all of these are beautiful aircraft. I mean, when I look at the John Air Mobility journey, I'm like, wow, that is really spectacular. But
mhm.
they need to take off, they need to land, and of course, there's also, and you mentioned it a little bit, the energy equation in here, which is a real head scratcher. So let's talk a little bit about infrastructure. How do you guys see it? And we've talked a little bit about MROs. How do you guys foresee integrating? One of the greatest thing that we have to do in AAM infrastructure is how in the heck are we going to marry kerosene, sustainable aviation fuel with electricity and ta-da, hydrogen. What a explosive cocktail that one is, right? So how do you guys how do you guys view all of that holistic operation there?
Well, when I think about if I were an investor in infrastructure, would I kind of put myself in the shoes of what would it take me to get to invest in that? And I need data. I need data on how these aircraft are going to operate. What's the market potential? What's the what are these going to need? So my argument is, and I put it in the paper that we wrote. It's on Bristow's website. It's a AAM, a philosophical guide to early operations. Our
We'll link
argument
to it.
is to utilize existing infrastructure today. There's lots of aerodromes. There's lots of
Yes.
fields that can be utilized. There's no reason to, for this point in our world. I know some of the OEMs that are going to be operating have a different view, and they need to have a different view. But in our world, we think we could utilize, we plan to, and we are going to, and we're doing it today, utilizing existing infrastructure,
Yes.
bringing in the charging networks, a la with beta technologies. And we've been proving that out, doing some high speed, fast charging in Norway, and it's working quite well.
Yes. Yep.
I'll say my expectations were very high when we started, and they've met or exceeded them.
Yes. True. True.
And also one of the reasons that we've partnered with companies like Electra and Elroy because of hybrid electric propulsion systems. So
There you
all we need
go.
is
Yeah,
fuel
Dave has
now.
done a great job with that. Absolutely.
They're fantastic. Both Dave and the Electra team, fantastic.
Yep.
Elroy and Electra,
Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So existing infrastructure. A lot of people think about, we're a helicopter, we got vertiports. But when you look at the way we operate our aircraft for offshore energy and for search and rescue, we do class one performance takeoffs, which from ground level means we're using the runway or we use a FADO. We have 3,000 feet of FADO somewhere, everywhere. So we're literally taking off. We're not pulling into a hover and launching out like you would,
No,
like maybe a air medical operations would be in a
that's
confined
right.
area.
Yeah. Yep.
So we've got all that infrastructure in place. We've got lots of concrete already built and placed. And then we're going to utilize the existing airport infrastructures around the world. So Norway is a great example. Norway has 5 million people. They have
Yeah, I know.
47 airports, right?
Yes,
47
of
airports. They're
course.
all beautiful airports. They're all well
Of course.
maintained.
They're
Avatar does a
beautiful.
great
Yes.
job. and they want to connect them even more with electric and hybrid electric propulsion systems.
Bingo.
So that leveraging existing infrastructure. Now you collect the data, and now you can substantiate, because it's going to cost billions of dollars to build these vertiports around the country and around the world. And you got to get that structure of cost down per unit in order to support the landing fees. Because if it costs $400 to land a 4-seat aircraft at a vertiport, you're already $100 a seat, and you haven't done anything to be on your operating costs.
Yep.
So we got to figure out how to do that. I think guys like Joe Ben and Adam, Archer, or Joby and Archer are going to come up with ways to do it. But initially, it's not going to be those beautiful renderings of floating vertiports, and those are $40-50 million. So it's going to take something like that. You'll see something more simplified. Skyports and Vertiports by Atlantic are doing a great job at coming up with solutions. The work they've done especially Skyports, work they've done in New York, the work they've done in London. We're working out in Cambridge. For Atlantic, Vertiports by Atlantic, same thing. That team is fantastic. So let's just keep that rolling. But it's going to be small.
No, but you're totally right. I think, and when I think back of the 2016, 2017 years, very enthusiastically thinking we'd hop from building top to building top, and the lavish, beautiful vertiports that people were designing. But now, if you talk to most of these people, of course, everybody understands that there's a coming to terms kind of moment. And I can tell you right now that I'm working with a few stealth mode companies that are designing different types of vertiports. In fact, now we call them multiports because they truly are multiports. And then right down to charging stations that are fully modular, agnostic, redundant, et cetera, so on and so on. And megawatts, right? So they're ready for megawatts too, which we'll get back to that one too. One thing that I've been really excited about for the last 3-4 years, I've been talking to all my friends in the industry, and I was like, this is incredible. When you go to Oshkosh, you can see 3 airplanes landing on one field, right? And this was, by the way, a conversation I had. We had Electra on the podcast. I had Mark Osman on the podcast, but about a year ago, last, I can't remember. But we talked about, this is crazy. We've had STOL ports. FAA had an AC, I think in the 70s. Military have used STOL ports. Why don't we have eSTOL ports? And then Mark said something that really just, that light turned on. But he said the FATO of their EL9 is less than that of an eVTOL that needs to come down. And I thought, wow, this is really amazing. And then I was talking to all of my other friends, and especially people at the FAA, and said, look, an eSTOL port, theoretically, 500 feet can give me three TLOFs. And the middle one could have a FATO yay big, so that when we do have 40-seater eVTOLs, they could really use that one, just land and boom. And so that's where I'm excited about what you guys, because you guys have already that in place, more or less.
Yeah, we have that in place. And I like your thoughts on how this technology is going to evolve and grow. And I think that it will. I was talking to some investors the other day about whether you take a bet on hybrid or whether you take a bet on battery. And so the interesting thing about distributed electric propulsion systems is it doesn't care where the energy is coming from, whether it's battery, hybrid, hydrogen. It's just got to be electricity that gets to it. And thinking about, you talked about Rivian and EVs. I'm about ready to make a purchase on a Rivian myself, probably later this year. I really like the technology and
I love
the
it.
vehicle that's evolved. I've just been debating truck or SUV. Is it's going to get better? It's going to get. So if you buy, say, just take the aircraft types and get better. If you buy a certain number airframe, that airframe, by virtue of software improvements, energy source improvements, flight control laws, software downloads are going to get better. So the aircraft's going to actually improve in performance versus what we see in turbine-powered aircraft where they degrade. Right. The turbines generally the power assurance degrades over time. Then it has to go in for a very expensive overhaul. So you got that. And if you need to take out the batteries and put in some other energy source, it's not as complex as changing the whole type certificate of an engine or an aircraft. So I think there's a lot of pluses there. And I do think that, size and scope will change over time.
Of course.
We're going to see a lot more hybrid electric powertrain systems.
Yes, it has to be.
Hey, Safran and GE are investing, right? They're doing it for a reason. They see something there. Yes. And I did speak. One of the secret sauces that we used is we went out to the tier 1 suppliers where are you putting your money? Who are you partnering with? Honeywell and GE and others, Garmin. And because they've got a pretty robust process of who they go in business with.
It's already there.
And that's what we kind of watched that to make sure that we were within the same. And we were also advocating for the industry to get some tier one suppliers. So I'm happy to
Of
see
course.
that play. And you'll start to see larger conventional and electric aircraft and larger eVTOLs as we move along process.
And it's the same everywhere, right? Cars, airplanes, boats, everything. We started with, you know, something simple, one seater. You move on to more and more and more. I'm glad you said Safran because I remember in, I think it was 2019, maybe 2020 at CES, I was there for the unveiling of the Ingenious electric motor. And I
Hmm?
thought, wow, what a forward thinking company.
Yeah. Great
Your
leaders.
traditional pylons for big turbojet or turbofans. And yes, these guys, and I'm French, right? So of course I spoke French to them directly and we had such a
Mm.
wonderful exchange. But it was really interesting to talk to these guys and to see, wow, you really are developing this. And by the time that was right on the heel of their Falcon Crest, the turbofan 2 that wasn't doing nearly as well. And I was just, wow, you guys are so well diversified. That's really intelligent. And today, indeed, they're pretty much everywhere, probably a little bit under the you know, the radar scope for the public, but Safran is definitely one of those companies I really appreciate out there.
Yeah, I
Um,
was privileged to visit the Safran helicopter engine facility in Po,
oh yeah, in
in
Poe,
in the
yeah,
Pyrenees.
absolutely,
And
yeah,
what a remarkable facility
yeah,
they've built there in terms of engine production. They've done it's just really the greatest technology you can in building turbine engines and what are going to be these turbo shaft engines with a turbo
yes,
generator
yes,
for their electric propulsion. And you know,
yep,
GE speaks for itself. So
yep,
yeah,
yep.
I was happy to get this chance to see that all that early and their thoughts on it early.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I was also pretty close to Rolls-Royce for a while, and to see where these guys are going to go, because I know it sounds like they're doing a lot of back and forth, but they're not. They're still going forward, just in a different way.
Yeah.
Pratt Whitney, we'll see also what they're doing. I know they're working on a lot of interesting things. So this is also another direction I wanted to take. Now, well, it's still within infrastructure, but one of the biggest problem that I find, and we've been finding, is the energy problem. You know, when we crunch our numbers, we come up with, let's say in about 10 years from now, our multi-ports are going to need about 10 to 50 megawatts of power at 6 o'clock reliably every day. And so without telling those numbers, I usually, you know, try to listen to utilities, and they're very, very, very generous in their view of the future. Then I start telling them the number, giving them the number. You know what? This is what an eCTOL will draw. This is what an eSTOL will draw. This is blah, 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 blah. And their eyes open. And I said, so, you know, alone from the fact that you can't generate it, can you even transmit this, right? And then we start to have a much more down to earth, mature conversation. And that's why recently, was it about 6 months ago, I found a British group, a startup working on using the hydrogen, the bypass hydrogen in Saudi Arabia, the refineries, turning it into ammonia, ship it everywhere, dirt cheap, and then burning it with only 3% hydrogen, which means nothing comes out of it. SOx, NOx are all gone as a local energy generator for multi-port. So how do you guys see the whole? There will be an energy crunch the way we're going about it right now. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about
It's
it. How do you guys see that?
Well, there's going to be a lot of constraints to eVTOL. It's not going to be the technology itself. It's going to be the infrastructure, the energy structure, and the people. We're going to need a lot of people that are going to have to
Yes.
transform themselves into either eVTOL pilots or eVTOL technicians and ground handling of high voltage systems. It's similar to what we do on the vertiports. You know, we think when you talk about energy companies, you know, they got to look at their capital invested and what kind of returns they can get on their capital, whether a public or private utility, and you know what it's going to take. So, you know, can we build enough copper wire to
Yes.
support the infrastructure?
Yep.
I was at it was in Paris. We had an infrastructure discussion there, and they had it all the way down to people that were mining copper that were coming in through this, and you know, lithium
Good.
and all that. So it's back to starting slow, being pragmatic, building up some data operations with existing to allow for the processes of investment. Now, we were talking to a local, well, it's a U.S. large utility in the United States that happens to support power inside Louisiana about the ideas. And when we started showing them the numbers, they were actually willing to build a natural gas facility nearby to support energy
Wow.
production. That takes information and data, and we got to go through that process. So it's because it's going to take a tremendous amount of energy, and you can't. I mean, look at California when they had the brownouts. Don't
Oof.
charge your vehicles. We can't have that. Because we need, back to a mantra: safe, reliable, efficient. If you don't have a
Absolutely.
reliable energy source, you don't have a reliable operation. So we've
Absolutely.
got to be able to support all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's one of the I think it's one of the last fundamental problems that we have. I know a lot of people look at, public acceptance and all of that good stuff and everything. I'd like to call it public desirability because it's darn
Hmm.
cool. But the energy equation, that's still the one thing that's missing. And then of
It
course after
is.
that we can talk about insurance, we can talk about all kinds of other things that come on top of it. But that's one of the fundamentals that we need to address at this point. More
And
than
we spent back to insurance. We spent a lot of time over the last 2 years with our underwriters and other
good.
underwriters of insurance
Good.
because they don't have the data yet, right? So
No.
we, I think, I can't say this for a fact, but I believe it to be close to true. Is we wrote the first insurance for advanced mobility operations when were flying the
Really?
aircraft in Norway. So we brought the underwriters
Wow.
in, talked to them about what we're doing, talked about our core competencies, how we're applying the same logic and same processes and procedures we would to anything. And then we brought him over to visit and see the operation. And I just had a briefing with him in London, myself and colleagues, a week and a half ago. And they're very, very happy with the processes that we're going because they just want data, they want information.
Hmm.
It's the same
Of
thing with
course.
with
Of
the
course.
infrastructure of processes. So back to the argument. Let's solve problem one, two, and three before we start solving problem 500. And problem one, two, and three are build an aircraft, certify and test it, put it into operations. And argument is, let's make that operation very short range, simple
Yes.
processes using existing infrastructure, because we got to get ourselves to prove safe, reliable, efficient. We've got to
Right.
prove to the regulators that's safe, reliable, efficient. They can expand our applications. And by virtue of doing those two things, we'll start to gain the public's acceptance. Because we can't
Absolutely.
just assume public's going to go, great. Yeah, we'll get 10% of the people that are going to, jump in any
Yeah.
new technology because it's cool and they're brave.
Always.
But the rest of the world needs to see the validation of these operations in a safe, reliable, and efficient manner.
You're totally right. Crawl before you walk, before you run. I think that's really
Yeah.
important. In fact, I'm going to go to the Disaster Expo down here in March in Miami because I want to see how ready people are. What my very informal talks with a lot of companies is, well, I'm thinking, it's not a case of if, it's a question of when there will be a problem and how you will react to it. And one problem, even though it's your competitor, will affect us as a whole. So we have
Absolutely.
to be ready for all of that good stuff. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys have more than ready on that side
We
because
are.
you already do
We're,
operate. Yeah, you operate already.
we do. Well, there's a great organization that we belong to. We're a founding member of called Heli Offshore. And
Okay.
Heli Offshore was founded in 2014 from a different organization that was really focused around operations, not as much as offshore helicopter safety. In the early tens, we had some very serious issues to deal with, some accidents and some reliability
Mm,
issues with the aircraft. And we had to take it upon ourselves to really come together and share safe information, safe reliabilities, and safe practices, which we do with our peers. We do it in a non-commercial way. We don't talk about commercial stuff. But we do share things that we find, incidents. We share safety data. We share some best practices like approach practices and health monitoring practices. So we're advocating a similar organization for advanced air mobility for just the purpose you put, because there are going to be problems. Capital will find its way to people that shouldn't operate aircraft that are going to operate aircraft. And they're
yes.
not going to have, I don't think anybody wants to be unsafe. What I do think
No,
is
no,
that a
of
lot of
course
people
not.
don't know how to be safe. Because they
It's
haven't gone through those years of practices and learnings. You can buy really safe stuff, best
yes,
technology. You can implement process and procedures, but you got to have a culture, a leadership culture that
you
drives
got to
that
have the
safety
culture.
to,
Yeah.
I care about you. I don't want you to be
Yeah.
hurt. I don't
Yeah.
care if it hurts the business profitability. Do the right thing. That's
That's what
that's where it gets hard.
That's why I wrote a few articles on vetting the people you work with, making sure that their culture is well founded. That, in in aviation, safety is first and foremost when you wake up. Safety is first and foremost when you go to sleep. But yeah, just like anywhere else, you also have people who are going to cut corners without even knowing that they're cutting corners. And all of a sudden,
Think
well, we've seen,
you're doing you a favor. Don't ever do
yeah,
me
they
a
think they're doing
favor.
you a favor. And you see it, right? All of a sudden, this person is in jail because of XYZ. And I'm willing to bet you maybe 50% of the time, they really had no idea. The other 50% of the time, they're just crossing their fingers. But that's, part of the nature. That's just how it is.
When we
So
were a small enough organization, I was the president of a division of PHI, and we had, I think, 300 or 400 pilots. Every new class of pilots that came through, I asked to meet with them. So I would sit
good.
down in the office and just talk things. I'm an aviation guy, so I can talk the same things. And last thing I would leave them with is don't do any favors. We have processes and procedures in place for a very good reason. There's no job that needs to be done that puts you or the passengers of the aircraft at risk. I'd rather
Ever.
call an energy CEO saying, I'm sorry you didn't move your people today because this
But
reason happened, versus there are 4 people in the water and we're looking for them now.
yeah,
So that always, I think that's a message that sits with people, and that's the way we work. And it's just, let's do the right thing always. There's no reason to cut corners. Be safe, because I care about you and I care about our
of course.
passengers and I care about all the things that go with it. Or, and
You
I
know that,
say I, meaning Bristow,
of course. Yeah. There was a great story not too long ago about one of the domestic airlines here in the United States, and the captain said, "Sorry, we will not fly today right now because my crew is tired and they were at the cusp. They legally they could
Yeah,
have."
yeah,
And I thought, "Wow, I'm sure the passenger must have been." And you know what? Nope, all of them applauded, and that also
I
like
would, yeah.
proves to show that people they understand that it's my safety. My bottom is on that seat going up there. It was
Yep.
beautiful.
And 60% of all accidents, whether it's air or traffic or whatever, have a fatigue related
Absolutely. Yeah.
application to it. So if
Yep.
something in
Yep.
there was somebody was tired or somebody was
Yep.
overworked or somebody wasn't at their best that moment. Yeah. Yeah.
And it
It's a
happens.
serious, human performance is a serious science.
Yep. It happens. It happens. So usually at this time, we start to get more into the personal aspect of the conversation. And so one of the questions I'd love to ask is, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Why are you still doing this? I mean, you could have had another job somewhere, and just or even retire from the military and take your time and everything. But you're out there doing something you're obviously very passionate about, and you do pretty well. So what is David's motivation here?
I've been interested in aviation since I was a young kid. I used to draw pictures of helicopters and airplanes, and I grew up in Delaware, just south
Mm,
of Philadelphia International Airport. So I saw I saw the airplanes flying over. Wilmington Airport is not far by, so I saw the other aircraft flying in, and we had military aircraft around all the time.
that's right.
And then I got into aviation through the military, and then 40 plus years in helicopters. I was starting to get a little tired of dealing with the same thing over again, so the
Yep. Of
repetitive issues in
course.
helicopters. And then, so what's getting me up is that I'm part of a revolution of aerospace.
Mm.
I'm a small
Mm.
part of
Yes.
what's happening to really change the scope of the aerospace industry, to change the way we move people and goods in the future. Right now, I have 8 grandchildren. I'll probably have a few more.
Wow.
I think they're, the oldest is 5. So in 20 years, this may be a normal mode of transportation for them,
Yes, yes. You've been
and I
putting
want to make sure
dinosaur
it's
poop
safe,
in your
reliable, and
cars?
efficient. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
that's what gets me up. It's 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 really just fun. The people that I'm working with at our OEM partners, that are suppliers in the infrastructure side, are just amazing. They're
Yes,
they're
yes.
just they're different. They're cut from a different cloth than traditional aviation people
Yes,
are, which are still
yes,
really
yes.
amazing people most of the
Yes,
time.
to start
But they're
with,
also getting kind of grumpy
yeah.
because they've been doing it for a long time.
Yep.
It's really interesting. You're getting a viewpoint. You're getting a clean sheet of paper to work on something, to work on commercial agreements, to work on contracts, to work on new technologies. All these things are new. We're paving a new way, and to be a small part of that is just exciting to me. So that's what keeps me.
Yeah, and that's indeed, and it's felt. It's definitely felt. For those who are watching this or listening to the podcast, what would be your final word of wisdom? And I'm thinking here, like whether you're weathered aerospace a veteran or somebody just thinking about aviation in general. You might be in high school and college, whatever. What would be your words for these people, especially as it pertains to advanced air mobility?
Embrace the future, embrace new technologies, but embrace it with the knowledge of what you have already built, and how do you build on that. And where I mentioned cutting a new path, you don't want to go in the same direction that everybody else goes, because you're just going to get where they are. So, find your way, find your passion that drives you, whether if it's an aerospace, whether it's an engineer, or whether it's flying aircraft or maintaining the aircraft. All are vitally important, equally important positions. Supporting the logistics is vital. People getting in the cockpit, the engineering behind it, the maintenance behind it, all vital. So just find that passion and know that all jobs in this world, and there's a really great opportunity for growth. I mentioned, and people are certainly going to be
Oh yeah.
one of the challenges we have. We're going to start embracing that a little bit more this year and next year,
Yes.
and how we train and how we write. But yeah, it's just a new technology. Think of aviation. Don't think of aviation as this big aircraft with turbine engines and helicopters and reciprocating engines.
No.
This technology is cool. I had a chance to fly a Leah in Norway.
Good.
It was just
How
a
was
highlight of
that?
my aviation
Oh,
career.
wow.
What an amazing sensation of flying an
Yeah.
electric aircraft,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
couple it with the beauty of Norway. I flew right over a Disney cruise ship that was at Stavanger Airport, Stavanger Marine Port. That was just ironic to see that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Actually, I
So
got a
yeah.
good story about the 250, the Beta 250. I actually did a simulator for the eVTOL part.
Hmm.
So I don't have a pilot license, but I know how to, I mean, I understand how to fly. I'm a drummer, so I know how to use all four parts of my
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
differently, right? So, taking off, fine, no problem. Then go right into wing mode, and that's all fine until I come back and I try to aim for that
Yeah. It's tough,
for
isn't
that
it? Yeah.
vertipad. Poof, overshoot. I'm like, well, oh, that's kind of weird. So I come back and I try to go a little slow. Poof, and overshoot. I'm like, duh, I got to get back into helicopter mode, VTOL mode here. And I crawl, and boom, and I
Hmm.
landed. And I thought, wow, how spectacular. Whether you're a helicopter pilot or you're a fixed wing pilot, or both, you get to learn something totally new, and you get to do both at the same time. Every time you fly these aircraft, it's really, and I'm assuming same thing with eSTOLs, because now we're really in between the fixed wings and rotary propellers kind of thing. So yeah, well, rotary propellers, aren't they all rotary propellers? Rotary wings, I meant.
Yeah. The skill sets are going to be different than they are. The old
Yeah.
stick and rudder thinking
Yep.
is
Yep.
different. The
Yes.
control
Yep.
systems are slightly different between each
Yep.
aircraft,
Yep.
but the technology is so advanced, and it's gonna really open up opportunities and reduce the level of bar of entry, the cost specifically for more people to get into it. I think it's going to be really
I agree.
an interesting opportunity.
I agree.
And
I
I think we'll
agree.
be
It
using
is.
pilots for a long time. I do believe in autonomous, but I think we'll be having pilots for a long time.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's funny because yeah, we're designing right now curriculum for drone pilots, for pilots and all of that good stuff.
Hmm.
But yes, it's going to take a long time before we have Whisk fully autonomous and everything. And we're glad these guys are doing it, because yeah, it's heading in that direction one way or the other. But look at our cars. I mean, it's the same thing everywhere. Look at boats, Transocean. It's just
Yep.
that's the way to go. But right now, no, we're going to have people. And these people, by the way, are going to come out of the aircraft. They're going to go down, and they're going to still be remotely flying
Be
this
remotely
before we get
piloting and
into,
controlling. Yeah.
yeah, it's nothing happens in one big gulp like that. David, thank you so much for being with us
Nicholas, it's my
today.
pleasure. I'm glad we got
It was
together.
very enjoyable as always, and always an open invitation to have you back at any time, talk about anything, because it's always great to hear from you guys and to learn everything that you're doing, and to know that yeah, Bristow is one big company with a lot of different operations everywhere. So thank you very
Thanks,
much. I
Nicholas.
appreciate that.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Likewise.
Bye bye.
Well, there you go. You heard it from David Stepanek, who is the executive vice president at Bristow. He is the important person who's bringing in advanced air mobility into the operations of Bristow. And as you heard it, well, we don't really know yet how it looks like exactly because we're still building everything, but the business model is there. And one thing that I walked away from this podcast is that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. The business model already exists. All we have to do is tweak it to now work with electric air mobility, which is, by the way, the name of my company. We also talked about infrastructure and, hey, we already have airports. We already have 5,000-foot runway, and even a 500-foot runway is enough to land three different eVTOLs in it and eSTOLs in the middle of it. So you heard about all of this. If you've liked this podcast, if you've enjoyed, please subscribe. Please write a comment, give us a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, and let us know what you think and how do you see advanced air mobility? How do you understand urban air mobility? And how do you see yourself fit in it? If you are someone who works in any forms of innovative mobility solutions, please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. We're looking for people who work in the railroad industry and, of course, also in the electric maritime industry, because a lot is happening on both of these fronts. In the meantime, we hope you've enjoyed this, and we look forward to seeing you again next week with another personal good friend of mine who works in the industry. Thank you all. My name is Nicholas Art, and you're watching or listening to the Ways We Move podcast.